Theme Park DS is the closest thing we have to Roller Coaster Tycoon on the DS, and that's terrible. I played the crap out of the original Roller Coaster Tycoon as a kid, and it still holds up as one of my favorite PC games of all time. One thing that I always wished for was a portable version. Roller Coaster Tycoon didn't see any love until last year when Roller Coaster Tycoon Classic came out to iOS and Android, which I have played quite a bit of. My prayers were finally answered, because Theme Park sure wasn't listening. Theme Park is a port of a PC game of the same name, and the predecessor of Sim Theme Park and Sim Coaster. Oh god. Once the game loads up, a cutscene of an old man magically building up a ton of rides and attractions play. And notice how vibrant and colorful everything is? Bright green grass, attractions that pop out and make the whole park really colorful and fun. How everything works together to make it a cute looking theme park. Was keeping with this too much to ask? Considering the game is just the same thing over and over, you would think they could at least make all of the attractions work together, or let us change the color schemes. Because the actual in-game stuff is either too muddy, like the grass, this balloon stall, or the maze, while others, like literally anything red, pops out way too much. Any color scheme gets thrown out the window, and without any way to change the colors, it just becomes sort of lifeless. And since you have different levels that you have to complete, it all becomes muddled together, making everything feel way too similar, and takes out any fun in creating different and varied parks for each level. I don't really want to keep comparing Theme Park to Roller Coaster Tycoon, but each area in RCT looked different. They had challenges that you had to work around and different terrain that would help you decide which kind of park you wanted to make. It kept each park from being too similar and inspired players to use their imagination to make something super pretty. Theme Park took all of that and threw it out the window in favor of one minor stall being swapped out for a different country-themed one, depending on which area you were in. One of Theme Park's biggest weaknesses is the fixed view. Unlike other games, you aren't able to rotate your field of view, or even rotate your rides and attractions. It restricts a lot of creativity, and it ends up being easier to build everything in a straight line than try and make a nice looking park. Plus, even when you do attempt something original, customers will end up getting stuck on nothing, causing you to either delete paths or even entire attractions to free them. Especially in the form of getting stuck on rides, I had a few instances of customers getting stuck at the exit to a ride, despite most others not having any issues passing through. It was extremely frustrating having to delete a costly ride just to free a couple of poorly programmed AI. And on the subject of AI, the amount of signposts needed to stop them from getting lost in my park is ridiculous. Even when my park was a straight line, every square was practically filled with signposts, and that still wasn't enough. It gets extremely frustrating very quickly as any chance of creating a noteworthy park is washed away by a flood of blue signposts. I want to just really quickly bring up how you move about the menus, because it's up there for one of the worst interfaces on the DS. Instead of just tapping on the options, you have to either draw a circle or check mark for it to register that you want to select said option. I learned early on you can also just draw a line through it, but considering that tapping isn't really a hard concept, I have no idea why they thought that drawing something would be easier. Especially since there are times you can tap on options to access them. It just makes you guess on whether it wants to be tapped or drawn, and it makes using the interface extremely frustrating. One thing I absolutely despised in this game was that you didn't get any roller coasters right away. If you're playing in sandbox mode, you don't actually get a plan to build roller coasters until the 7th year into your park. I ended up beating my first playthrough without even seeing a coaster. I honestly thought they just didn't add them to the game. In Sim and full mode, you have to pay to unlock the coaster, so you can get it a lot faster, but not until you unlock the 6 things before it. And when you do finally get to build one, it fights against you every step of the way. Want to make an incline? If you go too far, the rest of it will go with you, so you now have to erase all of it and try again to keep it at the height you want. Want to make a loop or a twist? I honestly don't even know how to make one. The back of the box suggests you can, but since the only options are up, down, and erase, I couldn't figure out where the option was. Want the coaster to go over something? Well, you can't. For seemingly no reason other than the coaster is considered a path by the game. When your coaster is finally built, you might want to go and build another one, only to be told that you can only build one coaster in your park. You could argue that a park doesn't need more than one coaster in it, but A, have you ever been to a park with only one coaster? I have. It's super boring. B, when it's advertising that you can build your dream park, but then limits you on how many of one thing you can have despite being able to build more than one of everything else, it becomes another major letdown that this game already has a lot of. And C, it's super boring! I also want to bring attention to these guys. 4 characters that you can choose to help you run your park. And although I'm sure that they don't actually have an influence in how well your park runs, I do believe that Lee is cursed or something. With the other 3, I didn't have too many issues running my park or falling close to bankruptcy, but with Lee, it had to take me ignoring him to actually get out of the red. He kept suggesting that I build a Snakes and Ladders attractions, but with how unreliable this thing was, it would keep exploding on me, costing a ton of money to rebuild. And yes, I meant explode. For some reason, every attraction in your park has a chance to literally explode on you. When it starts to break down, it will start smoking, indicating that a mechanic will make their way over there and fix it. Having it fixed takes way too long as well, as the mechanic will place up walls, fix it, then tear down the walls. You can speed up the time it takes to do this, but you have to tap on the mechanic, which becomes super hard as this is a touch screen and you will most likely tap the building instead, quite a few times. You also have an option to send a mechanic over right away before they get the call to head over, but I don't know if it ever worked, as I never saw an actual improvement over the mechanic's response time. Each ride has a reliability factor, which helps you determine whether it would be worth your time to build it. Snakes and Ladders by far is the worst one, and not having one is more beneficial than trying to stop it from inevitably exploding and ruining your park. However, every guide will continuously suggest that you build the ride, which can be super annoying since I couldn't find a way to turn their help off. Another pain in my butt is that when the rides explode, they leave the land completely ruined, meaning you aren't able to build in the areas covered in rubble. You also can't remove the rubble, and considering how small the park sizes are, it becomes increasingly frustrating when you have no control over your ride's upkeep. Sandbox mode is a virtual death sentence. It is super unwise to play this version, even if you're starting out because of how slowly you get anything. Mind you, Sim and Full aren't any better, but you at least get to speed up the time you get buildings with the research option. However, you have to sink a lot of dosh into this to get anything, and considering there are 6 research options, you tend to just focus on ride stalls and, if you actually care enough, upgrades. Upgrades allow you to, well, upgrade how many people are delivered to your park by bus, and also increases the size of your warehouse. You don't get to choose which one it does, and it can cost you a lot, especially at the start when you don't have a lot of money. Now, the warehouse is supposed to be this thing you manage that you have to keep on top of, but after you get 1 or 2 upgrades on your warehouse, you hardly ever have to pay attention. It sort of takes the fun out of the management side of things. You'll also occasionally get a random event that has you going to a meeting to negotiate prices for certain things. This is, of course, never explained to you. I had no idea what I was doing, so I accidentally ended up increasing my workers' wages by over 25%, which I mean, yay for them. If they ever did anything. Have I mentioned how awful the AI are? Of course I have, but it needs reiterating because I had 4 handymen in my relatively small park, but instead of moving around, they all hovered in one little corner, causing a bunch of litter to cover every other inch of my park. And yeah, there's an option to path out where they walk, but considering how small the park was, I honestly didn't think it would be necessary. One of the final things this game tries to shove in here to seem interesting is the option to buy and sell stocks. I'm not going to pretend I know what I'm doing in this situation, but I do remember that whole buy low, sell high phrase. But with no help from the guides to aid me, I just sort of bought stocks in my own company, and a company that dropped down so fast I almost went bankrupt in real life. So I ended up selling everything and just ignored it for the rest of the game. I know what they were going for, but considering the rest of the game's stylistic choices, this drab menu really doesn't fit well with the rest of the game. And since it's never explained properly, it seems more like it was tacked on last minute to give Theme Park an edge. You have to go through so much just to get to something resembling fun, and even when you do, you're already super close to beating the level, and drained of any life you had in you before going into this. It's like getting a taste of some delicious dessert after eating a lackluster dinner, only to have your mouth forced open and sand dumped down your throat. Okay, maybe not exactly like that, but it sure felt that way.